I've been hearing quite a few, some interesting ones. Just give me a little while for my brain to. I've been worked overtime. I got to recall stories. I've been very busy with the American Bigfoot radio shows. The activity for those damn things is going up like crazy. Yeah, the last few months I've been bombarded with so many different stories. Oh, the guy who runs the Bigfoot radio show I'm on, he had this is a true story. He got a phone call from someone who was having problems on their property, a farmer, and this guy was having a lot of livestock that was getting killed, and they had their suspicions as to what it might be. He went out there with a couple of his mates, like Ralph himself, the guy who hosts the show. He went out there with a mate. You're not going to believe what they encountered. No, they encountered a sheep squatch. A sheep squatch. It's real weird. There's lots of stories flying around about how the thing came into existence. Some people reckon it might be a lab experiment.
It's the Muslim men when there's no women
No,
around.
no. This thing would fuck up a Muslim man. I reckon it could be a lab experiment that got loose. There's another story going around that there's two types of these creatures. The other one's goat man and the other one's sheep squatch. And they reckon these two creatures might have been summoned by a bunch of devil worshippers that were chanting some kind of, and they brought it into existence and couldn't control it. And it's been, but sheep squatch, it is common, and the other one's the goat man. Yeah, there's been some recent sightings of him too. The Mothman, he cropped up again. No, they encountered this thing, and when they encountered it, it was banging its horns against a tree. It wasn't stuck. It was literally banging its head against a tree. It was banging its horns. It's all right. That's what the thing, and it didn't like being interrupted. It chased him off out of the area.
I was gonna say, I'm guessing it was horny.
Sorry. You never know. I wouldn't joke about it because I've seen goats, real goats. This thing was about over 9 to 10 foot tall. Yeah, there is certain areas where I think they were out at Oklahoma, a particular area. It's one area where they were doing it in. It's known for devil worshipping out in the forest and stuff. But, yeah, sheep squatch is quite scary. I've heard of another case where a guy encountered one. The damn thing came into his barn. Wasn't happy, growled at everyone in the barn. They ran out of the barn real quick. And yes, they're highly aggressive and they do not like human beings. Yeah, they can be, but depends on the type of Bigfoot though too. I've heard stories of Bigfoot attacking people livestock too. When they run out of all the local wildlife, like all the local deers and all the other animals. Oh yeah, there's been quite a few. There's been a lot of good ones lately. There's been some good ones, and there's been newer Dogman and Warewolf sightings too, on and off. No, there's plenty of sightings cropping up. There's been some new sightings here in Australia too about Dogman and Warewolf. There's a guy who saw a werewolf in Adelaide a few months back. He was just out forest walking with his children and wife. Had the shit scared out of him. Well, when they saw it, it was daytime, and it was some particular some national forest in Adelaide on the outskirts, one of the particular towns, some national park. They actually saw it. It wasn't being aggressive. It was just standing there staring at him. He said the height of the thing was about 12 foot tall. Hell of a lot more aggressive too. But they usually don't go near humans much. They try not to. Same thing with the Dogman. They are known to attack human beings and mess them up. But yes, there has been. There's lots of scenarios, and they're very territorial. They can't stand each other. And there's stories of the big three fighting it out with each other. Bigfoot, Werewolf, Dogman, fighting it all out with each other for territory. Some areas, there's that many of them in certain areas that they have to learn to live with each other in the same space and tolerate each other. They just crop up everywhere. The thing is, they're like a pack. They got the pack mentality, and they move around in packs, and they're very nomadic. They don't stay in one place long enough. They're always on the go, always moving. They'll go wherever the food source is, wherever there's high numbers of anything from moose to deer and whatever else, bear. They're omnivores. Yeah, both meat, fruit, fruit, nuts, berries, roots, meat, whatever they can get their hands on, seafood. No, people have seen them by rivers eating things like shellfish, clams, fish. They usually go after real large salmon, trout. No, actually, it is possible to see them near an ocean. People have seen them by the ocean. Yeah, it happens. It happens quite a lot. Crazy, all the stuff going on. And there's more reports of these things actually going into people's homes. it just gets weirder and weirder. There's one story I remember hearing. It was an elderly couple. They heard noise downstairs in their house, and they were freaking out. They thought they had a burglar. They go down with a few weapons, and they find this massive 12-foot tall Bigfoot raiding their fridge. They were trying to figure out how it got in. Somehow it got in through the door or something. It got in through, and yeah. Yeah, they do. I was talking with Mike Patterson. I actually know the guy from Sasquatch, Ontario. You can look him up on YouTube. He actually has regular communication with those creatures on a private property up in Canada. They do all kinds of things. They give him yes, he actually talks to him. They talk back to him in English. They give him gifts, all kinds of stuff. They give him little marbles. He's had the creatures come in. Yeah, a gift. Yeah, they call it gifting. Yeah, and the creatures do often give people back. They do gift back from time to time. There's all things going on. This guy, they leave gifts for him in his home too. They actually come into his house while he's sitting there. But the ones he encountered, they're friendly Sasquatch. They're not bad ones. No, all the ones he's encountered have been good. Yeah, they're all very friendly towards him. So, I have heard stories where I have heard a lot of stories where they've actually helped people out. So, same thing with Bigfoot. I've heard stories of Bigfoot actually helping people as well. They are known for mimicking a lot of other different animals. I'm just wondering what kind of yowie he might be encountering. If it's a Jujunde, that could be a bit of a problem. I've heard stories come out of there too. There's one lady, I can't remember now what area. It's up in Queensland somewhere. She actually had one on the roof of her house. At first, she hears this banging sound on the roof. She thought it was just very large nuts falling off because she's got certain types of trees up above her house. And then a little later on, she heard movement, and whatever it was walking around on her roof. It proceeded to go near one of the gutters. It jumped off the gutter. And while it jumped off the gutter and walked off into the bush, it then tore her gutter system down. Well, there's a true story. I feel sorry for the woman, a lady who lost a small pet dog to one of these things. And it happened down in Melbourne late at night. She was hearing one of her dogs barking like crazy. She went outside to go get her dog. And then the dog went quiet all of a sudden. She was looking for her dog. She sees this, I think, 9 to 10 foot tall yowie holding a small dog, holding it, and it was crushing it in its hands. And the woman was just screaming at the creature, put it down, leave it alone. It let the dog go. The dog, she had to take it to the vets. The dog lived for about another week and then passed away from injuries. I think down here in New South Wales, I don't know where he is, in Newcastle or somewhere. He's got him on his property. He's described them. He said it's one male and a female. He stuck 2 sticks in the ground and said something to them out loud. No, he said something to the yowies out loud after driving 2 sticks into the ground. I can't remember what it was about the sticks. Just to see if they'd get just to see if he'd get a reaction out of the creatures, and he did. He told me what the reaction was. I can't remember all of the details. He was trying to make a statement. It wasn't a warning or anything. It wasn't a message like that. It was like a challenge. He gave him a test or something. He was testing him for something, and he told me what the results were. And it was just went, oh wow, he got results out of it. Yeah, he knows they're there. There's a guy up at, if you were to look him up, it's Yowie Chronicles on YouTube. He lives up at Mount Tamborine, and he's got a pack of them up there. He's up there in Mount Tamborine, and he's got them up there in the property. There's a story I heard of a lady that lives up there at the top of Mount Tamborine. Her son had an encounter with one while he was out jogging, not far from Thunderbird Park. Her son went jogging, he encountered the thing, and it chased him for a bit, kept up with him while he was jogging. He ran away from it, came into the home white-faced. His mother goes, "What's wrong?" She goes, "Geez, dear, you look like you've seen a ghost." And he told her what had happened. So he encountered the thing while he was jogging. They are known to do it, certain ones, but most of them actually avoid human beings. But it's supposed to be a small group of them that are hanging around Redbank Plains somewhere, not far from the shopping centre. Yeah, there's supposed to be something out Redbank Plains way as well. Daisy Hill Forest has got something running around down there too, from what I've heard. I know there's stuff running around Beenleigh. There's also something running around Yatla as well, apparently, from what I've heard. On top of it, I have heard there's been some Dogman sightings down in and around Yatla. I'm trying to find out about that one at the moment. A friend of mine was telling me that something's been seen down there. A lot of things going on. I've heard a few things about down at Yatla. I've been going back into UFO research lately too, on and off. Been a few things going on. I've heard that there's a correlation. Same thing with Bigfoot. Wherever there's large UFO sightings or wherever there's large Yowie sightings, there's usually high UFO activity in the same area. There is a video, you can access it on YouTube now. It's I think it's called Bigfoot Alien Connection. It talks about all the comparisons. It just got released a little while back. Werewolf is a different cryptid again. I've heard some interesting stories about the werewolf, and I've also heard some interesting stories about the Dogman. And one of the what they found, the origins of the werewolf come from India, and your Dogman come from the Middle East. Yeah, there is that too, but these creatures are all over the place. They are in Europe, they're in India, they've spread out all over. And I reckon it's these creatures that actually lend credence to the story of werewolves. I reckon these creatures are responsible for the werewolf myths and legends. But all the werewolf sightings I've heard about, I mean, they can be aggressive, but most of the time, people will see them for a little while. The creature will stare at them and then eventually take off. It prefers not to mess with a human being. I have heard of cases too where they have attacked humans, but that was because of probably something else that was happening in the area. Something could have been happening for a long time that could have pissed it off. The other one you got to watch out for, Dogmen, on the other hand, they seem to have extreme pleasure out of torturing people. They love scaring the shit out of human beings. That's a creature that'll go at you and go out of its way to scare the shit out of you and not leave you alone. I've heard stories of them, people seeing them in the bush so many miles away from somewhere, and then on the way home, they get their scent and they track them all the way to their home. One story I heard with a guy, how he found out something wasn't right after he got home after seeing one of those things is these things started raiding his rubbish bins. Always late at night, a certain time at night, and it would raid his rubbish bins. Actually, it would start looking through his window, hit the side of the house, growl. They come out at unusual times in the morning, like 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. Yeah, they do actually. I've heard stories where they do exactly the same thing as the American Bigfoots. They'll look in through the window. One guy, I think, living in a house in the Blue Mountains, he's in his bedroom, lying down in his bed, and this thing comes up to his bedroom window. The outside, he's got a lot of bush around his house. He sees this, I think it was 12 foot, 12 foot Yowie comes up to his window during a thunderstorm. It looked at him right through the window and just growled at him. He got hit with a full-on infrasound blast. It's a very low frequency, very, very low. And the other thing is, they can bring it up or down. They can adjust whatever levels they want it at. And it brings about, if you get hit with it real hard, you straight away start feeling anxious. You suffer from anxiety, a lot of fear. It may not be the one that they're seeing. There'll be maybe 2 or 3 others or 4 or 5 others off in the distance that see you, and they'll then proceed to belt you with infrasound. No. It's just a sound that the creature generates from its mouth and inside its stomach, or it's like its diaphragm, whatever. They just know how to generate it. I've heard stories where people have actually seen those creatures using infrasound to hunt. They stun a deer with the infrasound, and when the poor deer just sits there in shock, can't move, and then the animal goes up and breaks its neck. There's been a few that have ramped up a bit. You've seen the video. There was a guy who caught one of those on film on YouTube somewhere up in a cane field up in Queensland somewhere. He was hearing a lot of weird noises late at night. He took a camera out to find out what it was, and there's the bloody thing standing there in a cane field staring at him. Yep, I know that quite well. No. Also in the US, the Bigfoot are very active even throughout winter. A lot of them will be hiding out in caves, but they have to be active. I know there was one guy that was out there doing research. I watched the video, and you can hear something screaming like a bird. It was this bird, and it didn't sound natural. When you actually hear the bird screeching, when you listen to the sound of the bird, it sounds like it's metallic. It sounds like a metallic sounding bird. Something to it. It sounded very metallic, the actual voice. Yeah, I've heard another thing I've heard, something similar. They reckon the air around them, you can smell it. They describe it as being ionized. He said the air around him smells ionized. But then again, there was a lady I heard about back in the 90s. She just finished working at RECQ, the RECQ places you got up there in Queensland, automotive. Okay, she was working there. She starts driving home. While she's driving on her way home back to Ipswich, she sees this UFO, right? She sees the thing flying low level, and the thing's following her. She tries to ignore it. She can't avoid it. The thing's following a low level all the way home, and she eventually loses it. She winds up getting home, and the damn thing is sitting right next to her home above the neighbor's yard. They're the actual UFO. It's sitting up basically outside her home, hovering over her neighbor's yard. The dog is freaking out, barking and yapping at this thing, and comes in real low into her backyard, and so many meters of water from the swimming pool got drained out during that period of time. A couple plants she had while it was there. It eventually took off after a while. Yeah, I've heard stories like that. There was another one I heard. The UFO clipped the nose of the airplane. It was a 747 or 737 or clipped the nose. They don't even know what they hit. And you could actually see the damage. The nose dented in. They hit something. No, with this UFO, it got in low. It was freaking the lady's dog out. It eventually took off. And she found so many meters of water was drained out of her pool. Some of the plants were dying not long after that. Her dog fell real sick. She had to take it into the vet, and the dog died a week later from radiation poisoning. There is a lot of that going on, and it's a complicated story. Somebody told me, I was talking with someone recently about it, and they knew what was going on. And this is someone who's ex-government, ex-military. It's a bit of half and half. Some of it is faked by certain governments, and some of it's the real deal. They allow the aliens to gather up a certain amount of people for their own purposes, and in exchange to have access to certain types of technology. The problem is the aliens told them that they were supposed to use it for the benefit of mankind, and they're not. They're pocketing it for themselves. They're keeping it to themselves, and they won't let anyone else have access to it. Have you guys seen it's on YouTube. It was a television broadcast that happened in the 70s to early 80s in England. It was a message from an alien race that was given to the human beings. It was British TV. They got interrupted by a transmission from an alien race. It overtook all channels, and it was a message from the alien race to the human beings. It was a warning about other alien races that may be causing us problems in future, not to trust them and to fight back. And they said that there was also some other warnings too, I heard too, about certain alien races that was given out to human beings, and warning alien races on Earth to clean up their act, stop interfering in human affairs. One of the warnings I heard, it's my allergies, they play up this time of the year. One of the warnings was to the rich elite people that are hiding all these secrets. They said if they do not start using the technology that was meant to benefit everyone for good, that there's going to be consequences. They want to deal away. They want to go and deal away with the bad, evil people. They're giving them the last chance to do the right thing. No, the other thing they said too, they want all the secrets about their technology and their contact with us to be divulged to the human race. And they said they've got a certain time to do this in. If they don't, they said they're going to start exposing themselves in real life. Yeah, warning all the world governments, giving them one last time. Yeah, there's. I've heard that too. I've heard something similar. They reckon there's going to be official disclosure in 2028. They have been doing it. Same thing with the cryptids too. When you start watching a guy on Dogman Encounters Radio, Jeffrey Naldane, there's the one where he interviews a government agent who was part of a cruise that used to hunt these cryptids that were killing and hurting people. It was his job for his crews to go in and take these things out, but they'd only go after the ones that were really causing problems. He's the one who talks about a breeding program in the US. It was started up during the 50s with Dogman and Warewolf, trying to use them as a bioweapon. They used 42 of these werewolves in a secret operation in Afghanistan a few months back. It was a special forces operation. No, this guy, Victor, he was involved with it, and he was part of that operation, and the mission was a success. I think they only had 1 mild casualty out of the werewolves. He had 42 werewolves with him. They butchered all the enemy forces in Afghanistan, has casualties, and there was a SEAL team that they let take the credit for their work. And this SEAL team that was there, that was fighting, had nothing to do with it. They had no involvement with it. They weren't even part of the operation. They're allowed to take credit for the work. And after these werewolves had done their job. They were taken back to the US and let loose into the wilderness. That was part of the deal. That was their last mission, and after they did their mission, if they're successful, they get freedom. What do you want to know about Area 51? Multiple things going on. Multiple things. The area was a testing ground for prototype aircraft and captured aircraft and a lot of secret experimental stuff. Then there was secret stuff that even high security guards on the base that didn't even know what was going on. There was a lot of stuff going on underground. Not far from Area 51, there's also another hidden secret base too that the aliens set up in the mountains. There's lots of things going on. There's also Area 52 as well. So, yes, they do. And so many miles north of it, there's actually a secret hidden alien base. No, it's weird. It's separate from them. The US government did find out about it. It was, what was it? I heard a report on this. There were guys that were doing, have you guys ever heard of the term remote viewing? They use a psychic. They got all these psychics that are trained up in remote viewing. They'll target a particular area. They'll hone in on that area and they'll tell you what's there without ever being there in person. They'll know what's there and what's been there and what's going on now, what's going on in the past. There was a guy who got bored one night and decided to start looking up all these different alien bases over different parts of the world. And one of the things he did was he concentrated on Pine Gap, told the CIA intelligence what he'd found. And he said so many miles north of Pine Gap, there's a secret hidden alien base underground in the mountains. That's what he told the CIA. No. He was. They couldn't. He was so high up in the CIA. He was doing a lot of work. No, he was actually working in the CIA, working for the CIA, and that's what he told them. They asked him to start remote viewing all these hidden bases underwater, on land, all over the world, and he gave him a list of what he found. Just because he got bored one evening, he wanted to do something, he couldn't sleep, and he decided to do the remote viewing, and he gave him, I don't know how many page report about what he found out, shoved it on one of their desks. There's that too. There's a lot of underwater bases. Yes, and there's a lot of land where human beings still haven't set foot to this day. They went down there recently. Did you hear about their little expedition that they did recently down there? They put a bunch of things on film. They went quite deep into the Mariana Trench, and whatever it was scared the shit out of them. They got out of there real fast, and they refused to talk about what they saw down there. They backed out, basically. And this was a scientific research team that went down there with cameras and everything. There was a case where a guy was, he put a tracking device on one large Australian shark, tracking off the coast of Queensland, certain area. It went down to a certain depth, and he tracked something else on radar approaching the shark. And whatever it was, he was picking up something else. And this something else took out the shark. The shark disappeared. Food chain. Something bigger took it out. But he said the tracking device he had on it, everything just disappeared. It went off the blip. This big thing came in, and that was the last he ever saw of it. There was just a few recent sightings of that creature that popped up recently too. People that were flying over Loch Ness. I think there's more than one in there. It's I think what it is they're breeding, and one dies out, and next generation carries on. There was a recent aerial footage, but back in those days, you got to look at the size of what they were. Even wombats. Did you ever see a prehistoric wombat? The other one that scares me is there's been sightings of it all up and down Australia. The Marsupial Tiger. Well, from what I understand, they go back even before the dinosaurs. That's what I've managed to find out. They were around when dinosaurs were walking around too. I know that. Yeah, you got the Mesozoic, Jurassic, Plesiozoic. I know there's quite a few different periods throughout history. There's lots of evidence to support that dinosaurs and man did exist at the same time as well. Well, they're the ones who are supposedly behind creating they reckon that they're behind creating the Dogman. Well, at that time when Atlantis was around, and there was another ancient race of people, the Sumerians, and apparently those races were known for mucking around with genetics. They were crossbreeding animals, creating all different types of gigantic creatures with the intent purpose of having them as slaves. Some of them were kept as pets. They would create for the purpose of labor, to do work, hard work for them. The rest of the body's still attached and it's buried underground. That's what they found out. That's an interesting one. The other one that gets me is the magnetic island, or Christmas Island, with all the crabs. Don't you guys know about it? Every year the crabs start off from one side of the island and they crawl in large numbers over to another.
Yeah, I've seen. Yeah.
And there's not much the locals can do about it. You've got everything, all these different types of crabs, including coconut crabs. They go to one area so they can mate, reproduce, lay eggs, and then, a bit weird. I think they call the place Christmas Island, if I remember. I know there's another area like that. Hundreds and hundreds of crabs just all around you, just crawling, crossing the road, going from one area. They're all crawling to one area. They go through people's houses, yards. They do. They go through people's houses. They go through people's backyards. Oh, they have theories that they were made somewhere else, dragged there. I mean, carved, dragged there, and then just placed there. You guys seen that? It's been all over the news. Somebody's been putting up those metal monoliths. They leave it sitting there for a few days and no one sees them come and collect it, and then they reposition it somewhere else. Different species again, and they're in certain parts of Africa. The locals do have a name for them. I was watching something on it. It's certain jungles, if I remember. The locals know where they are. There's a particular nickname for them as well. They got a certain name for... Yeah, they are voodoo, and they got all their shamans, their witch doctors. Yeah, there is in Africa, certain parts of Africa, from what I've heard. Yeah, no, there was this. I don't know if you guys know about it. It happened in 1997. They were tracking a UFO that was flying into South African airspace, and this thing was quite big. The South African Air Force was given orders to go up and shoot this thing down. They go up, send up a couple of fighters. They shoot the thing, damage it, force it to crash. They then roll in with the African army. They get given orders to take it and hold it in one place. A few hours later, not long after that, the African army forces get ordered to stand down, and the American retrieval team comes in and collects the whole thing, collects the wreckage, collects the bodies. And the US government had their own unit that had come in, and they took control over the whole situation. And that happened in 1997. I actually heard the interview from one of the guys that was involved with the retrieval. Yeah, but the thing was, the South African Air Force was given orders to shoot it down. They shoot it down. The African Army comes in, tries to take control over it. And then not long after that, US forces come in, US Army, US Special Forces, US retrieval teams. The special unbadged team unit came in to retrieve the whole thing, and that was the last I ever saw of it. But that's not the only thing. The high school principal was also threatened, as well as a whole bunch of teachers. There's a similar story to that happened in Melbourne, a high school in Melbourne. A lot of students saw it, a lot of teachers saw it, principals saw it, a lot of locals saw it, and they were all threatened by the authorities to shut up about it, not talk about it. And this happened in Melbourne in the 60s, during school hours, broad daylight, not at night time. If you want to watch a very freaky documentary, look up the Stardust Ranch incident. That's another place that's very similar to Skinwalker Ranch in the US. Now look up Stardust Ranch. The guy who owns it at the moment, after being there for 20 years, killing I don't know how many aliens on his property, they walk through portals. There are portals that open up inside his house and other parts of the property. They walk through, they come in and out. They tried abducting his wife on more than one occasion. He killed a bunch of them with a samurai sword once that were trying to kidnap his wife. There was another incident where he went out on his property. They almost had his wife being taken up in a UFO. He grabbed an AK-47, shot the shit out of the aliens, and then proceeded to shoot at the UFO. They reckon there's portals all over the place. It's just one of those places that attracts weirdness. They know there's portals there. Jonas has been seeing it for quite a while. There's one episode of Ghost Adventurers where they actually go to the place and they have a lot of weird shit happening while they're checking the place out. Ghost talking boxes, the things were talking back to them. They caught some things on film, things moving around. I heard him during an interview once, that guy. He talked about he actually had an accident happen to him when he was younger or something. He had to have surgery done on a certain part of his brain, and he reckons after that was done, the creatures can't affect him. They got no control over him. He's very strong-willed. This is what gets me. He got blood samples of one of the dead aliens. He sent the remains off to a professor, and they did testing, came back. And not long after the professor had got results, someone went and attacked the professor. They killed him in his laboratory, and they took all the evidence. It just gets weirder and weirder. It's another one of those type of places where weird shit happens as well. There is, but I forgot the name of it. It was a particular family that was living there, and the place was that bad. The whole family went nuts. They're trying to figure out what caused the whole family all the family members went mad after living there for so many years. There was so much weird shit going on the property. By them living there, the whole family went nuts. I've heard lots of different stories about a lot of paranormal going on. They said there were other similar things to what was happening at Skinwalker Ranch and Stardust Ranch. Same type of thing going on there. They reckon there was something on the property that was affecting everyone pretty badly. There's so much weird stuff going on in the world. Have you guys heard of any UFO crashes that happened here in Australia? 2 crashes I know of officially. One of them turned out to be some secret type of experimental airplane the Americans were mucking around with during the 50s or 60s. It crashed on a farm somewhere in Greenbank, a property known as the Williams Farm. There was a UFO reporter that did a report on it. It was called the Jonathan Pinky report. They actually talk about the thing coming down. They investigated. They used the UFO crash as being a cover story for what was really going on. There was the second one is the one that gets me. There was one out bush. Local Aboriginal saw the thing coming down, saw it crash. He reported it to the authorities. Not long after he reported to authorities, the guy went missing. Yeah, that's the first one was a secret experimental high altitude airplane. The Americans were mucking around with it, flying it over Australia, and something went wrong. It crashed. Yeah, I've seen that, the Tic Tac video and a bunch of other things. That's real. That is real. That is real because it's interesting though. Okay, I can tell you right now, guys, there was a secret program that was still kept going after Project Blue Book was shut down, but it went by a different name. And what's been written in those reports has not been released to the public from all the stuff they found out. And there was a lot of missing files that they took out of the original Project Blue Book too that they don't tell you about. It's strictly related to the whole UFO phenomena. There's a story I heard too about a guy working in Army intelligence. Was there for a while. He was there. They made him do some research and secret hidden underground bunker where they had library files, classified files, and a whole heap of things. He said while he was there doing research on something, he saw a whole bunch. He said he saw rows and rows upon files of classified files on all the American cryptids that exist all over the world and the US. And it was all marked classified. No, classified, highly classified. And he actually saw it. Shells and shells on these creatures, their origins, where they come from, the blood type, their hair type, what they really are. And he was scratching his head trying to figure out why would they have so much information on these things. Oh, I don't know. But he said those files were there too, covering extraterrestrial stuff. But they had massive, detailed files. He said rows upon rows upon rows, all on Bigfoot, Dogman, Warewolf. I met a few guys like that. The Rendulsham Forest incident in '89. He came and he was a security guard, chief of security guarding a base that was storing nuclear weapons in England. They had UFO sightings outside the base. They went to investigate. He actually saw the thing on the ground. He touched it. He saw something inside the craft. And yeah, I know of a good one. It's on film. I think you can access it on YouTube. The guys were in the right place at the right time. They filmed an abduction happening to a young woman that was getting taken out of her apartment and up into a UFO. It was all caught on film in New York. There was nothing they could do to help her. Yeah, she actually got taken. There's a film of her growing up. There's another good one too of a cow being abducted here in Australia on a farm, and this film was filmed in color in 1973. This farmer's paddock, during the daytime, he actually sees one of his cows getting dragged up into a ship. Yeah, I know about that. I read up on that. Actually, there's a few good books you can read on UFOs that they've come. I got a whole heap of stuff in my bookshelf that I read over the years. There's also one by Stanton T. Friedman. He explains how UFOs work. He explains to you, because he was a former nuclear physicist. He passed away recently too, actually, Stanton T. Friedman. I did meet him once. I got his autograph. He knew his stuff. He worked for NASA. He did a few other things. Stanton T. Friedman. His middle name's Terry. Yeah, he wrote a lot of books on this subject. He was one of the first, I think one of the first civilians that actually interviewed him thoroughly about what really went down. Yes, he's the one who started it. Another thing, there's a new doco that's come out now about Roswell. It's just come out recently. I can't remember the host of the show. I saw some bits of it. It's called Roswell First Witnesses. It's on the History Channel. What they're doing now, other people are coming out now that were involved. They're getting deathbed confessions, other surviving witnesses that were there that still remember what happened. They're coming out and they're remembering what had happened and they're telling people. There's a book that was written by a former secretary that worked at Area 51. She worked for the guy that was in charge for covering all the shit up. And from what she said, from what she remembered, a lot of weird shit that was going on. And there are these idiots now coming out and still pushing the Project Mogul thing and the dummies. There's this idiot that's come out. be about 6 years old now, but he's still pushing his agenda. He's saying that Roswell never happened. There was no alien crash. He pushes Project Mogul. He goes in a bit more detail about Mogul and the dummy dropping. Yeah, they were dropping dummies from high up and they're hitting the ground. They reckon that's what they found. And I'm not doubting that was going on, but all those events that they're saying doesn't measure up to when the crash happened. At that time, when the crash happened, they were not mucking around with the balloons at that time, and they weren't dropping dummies at that time either. Yeah, there was a good one I heard about before I moved down here, and it happened right over Browns Plains, believe it or not. Apparently, it was a bunch of lights that were flying a very tight formation, and it was seen going right over Browns Plains, going over a certain part of Mount Tambourine, and going out to a certain direction. I can't remember what area it was seen going out to. These lights were flying. They were flying very low, and they were flying a real tight formation that this thing was in. It wasn't a plane. Oh, I've heard lots of stories. It's usually the big one is missing time. They usually have a lot of experiments done to them. Yeah, or it could be quite a few weeks. Not the story. It's the actual. It's like a documentary book about what really happened. I've got the actual book somewhere about what the real story of what the movie's based on. Yeah, I know that story. They interviewed him again recently about what actually happened to him. He's got a few other things to tell about his story. Yeah, he mentioned some other things during interviews that he never mentioned before. Yeah. It's a good movie. I've also seen the special directors. There's like a special director's cut edition. It's a little bit longer, a lot more bonus footage that they took out of the original film. There's quite a few that they've done. There's this family in their house, and a lot of weird shit goes on, and they have it all on film what happened to them in their house. They were being attacked by these creatures. They shot one, they dragged it into the house. They thought it was dead, and it got up again, and it's a bit of a weird one. I did hear a story about a young guy up in northern New South Wales on his father's property. They're having a problem with a dogman there on his property. He saw it as a teenage boy, and then one night when he wasn't there with like in his father's place, he was out somewhere. The father was sleeping. This thing got into his house, got into his living room, and scared the shit out of the poor guy. Standing there at him, he got woken up by a presence, saw the thing standing there in his own room, and it proceeded to growl at him. It scared the shit out of the guy. No, Dogman. The thing worked out how to open up his door. It just walked in. It walked right upstairs and walked into his bedroom. Yeah, once it was in his room, it started growling at him and it scared the crap out of him. Yep, he said something to scare it off. Didn't like it and it took off. He got into a bit of a fight with it too, a bit of a fist fight. He was throwing stuff at it and he chased it off. There's only one other cryptid that I've looked up on, watched docos on it, and that's really scared the shit out of me. And they call the creature the hide behind. The hide behind, yeah. It's like an unseen entity. It's quite big, and it's known for ripping people to bits. Once it gets a hold of you, drag you off somewhere, and that's the end of you. The thing doesn't like people. It'll physically rip you to bits. Some people have described it. I'd have to watch it. I know someone who actually had an encounter with one, and he lived to tell about it. And this is a guy who was working in the logging industry in the US for a long time. This thing can actually take hard physical form when it wants. It stalks people from a distance, can blend in with its surroundings. The Native Americans have been talking about those things for years, the hide behind. They don't like talking much about it. It's the same thing as the skinwalker. You can't get a local Native American talking about a skinwalker. Bad juju. South America, they have something similar to that, and it's called the duende. Nasty little thing. Yeah, there's also there's also smaller people than those little dwarfs and gnomes that you're talking about that people have talked about. One guy was doing Bigfoot research up in Alaska and encountered some of these. He was up there gold mining and he encountered some of these little people that were trying to muck around with his dig site. There's a few creatures they mention like that. There's one in the US, I think it's called a Puckawadgie. There's a couple different types. They usually stand about 4 or 5 foot tall. They're quite nasty. I don't know about the Puckawadgie being linked to the pyramids. Yeah, I know what you mean when you say about the gnomes, but I'm talking about people that are a little even shorter than the gnomes. The Native Americans talk about them, and they keep referring to them as being little people. There's a story I heard about family having problems with some of these vicious little buggers. These things were hiding out and living out in a junkyard, a wrecking yard for cars, and they were living right next door to the wrecking yard. The creatures would come in and mess with their family. You'd come into their house without permission through the the animal flat where their dogs and cats keep coming in and get up to all kinds of mischief in the house. That was in the Philippines. That was Indonesia. Another one. Yeah, very interesting story. That creature jams, I think, a pole in one of the bike riders' bikes, and he comes off his bike. And the rest of his mates are chasing the thing off into the bush. You see this thing about standing, I think, 3 or 4 foot tall, wearing loincloth. It looks like it's carrying a spear or something, and it goes running off into the cane field. The real chupacabra, you want to find out what they look like? You look at the Native Americans that were doing border patrol between Mexico and the US. The creature that they describe there, it's like a few descriptions of it. Some people say it can fly, got glowing red eyes, it's got spines all the way from the top of its skull down its back, and it's often described as being partial reptilian looking, and the thing can move. But that other chupacabra, that diseased dog, I did some further digging, and that diseased thing that everyone thinks that might be a coyote, it's not. I found out exactly what it is. It's actually one of our Tasmanian tigers. What had happened during the 30s, they took a male and female to the US. They were kept alive, and they were going to be presented in a zoo in the US. It was being on a transport boat. Something happened to that boat. The boat crashed and sank in shallow water. The creatures got out, survived, and they reckon they've been running around in the wilderness of the US. And because of the conditions in the US are different for the creature, they reckon over a period of time the creature's changed its color. And every time I've looked at that chupacabra dog, where they actually showed the creature, people having the dead animal, I look at it and go, there's something very familiar about that dog. And when I look at a photo of it and I look at a photo of a Tasmanian tiger, it looks like a Tasmanian tiger that has got diseased fur and mange, and it's lost its stripes. That's what it looks like. It's somewhere along the line, it changed its appearance to suit its environment. But there's footage of 2012, a guy who caught footage of one on their farm. There was another one in 2016 that happened here in Australia. They filmed it here in Australia, South Australia somewhere, running around up in the... And there's a guy in northern Tasmania that has a family of Tasmanian tigers living on his property. He's seen in northern Tasmania on the farm, he's seen a male, a female, and little cubs. There was one that cropped up recently. They were having some weird activity going on one of these islands in the Pacific, and they wanted to know what was going on out there. They set up these little cameras that were filming, when they go to night, it's one of those cameras that can film at night vision and stuff. You see all these lizards walking around not far from the camera, and you see this one dodo walking back in front of the camera. If you look it up, it's there on YouTube. And a lot of people saying, no, it's not a dodo, it's something else. And you can tell by the head structure, the way it moves, it's a dodo. There's lots of stories I keep hearing about that. They reckon they finally found the wreckage further out, somewhere out in the ocean. There's another story I've heard. They found it in some jungle somewhere. It's landed, but it's sitting somewhere in some jungle, some forest. They got a photo of it on a satellite photo. There was another one I heard about it recently too. They were looking for something else, and they believe they found it in a very unusual area. They know where the wreck is. It's underwater. They know where it is, but they've been told to keep their mouth shut about it. Well, they do know where Noah's Ark is. They do know where it is, and for a very long time you couldn't go near it because there was a psychotic group that were actually protecting it. They wouldn't allow anyone near it. You had to, if you wanted to go on it, you had to get permission from certain locals. It was a particular group that you had to contact. They would chase you off with AK-47s. They wouldn't let you anywhere near the site, Mount Ararat, and they've confirmed that it is Noah's Ark. There was if you looked on YouTube, you can find it. There's a Chinese research team that actually go up inside it and actually film inside the Noah's Ark. Actually get inside the thing, you can see it. My mum's got a book on it. I'd have to check with my mum. It was a guy that spent a long time looking for it. Eventually, he did find it. The guy who wrote the book on it, I don't think he's around anymore. Doing a lot of research throughout the 70s, 80s. He actually stood on it. He eventually did find it and actually did stand on the thing before it was deteriorating. They found the boat anchor from it too, not far from the site. And they also found his home. They found Noah's Ark's home. He built his home not far from where the Ark. Yeah, they actually found his home, and they believe they found his grave markers. Grave, where he's buried, not far from his home. They found what was left of his home, and they found his grave. They found grave markers. They actually found the grave. Yeah, if you look, it's on YouTube. There actually is a Chinese archaeological group. They're actually inside it, walking around, and they're filming everything that they see. Some of the wood is brilliantly preserved. They found nails in certain parts of the wood. Some of the wood's slightly becoming petrified. They've mentioned that they've been exploring certain parts of the ship. They've been on certain levels. I don't know how far they've gone in. It's like that pyramid they found in Croatia. They actually found a perfect pyramid that was man-made, and archaeologists are finally getting into it, checking it out, and they're finding all these hidden secret rooms. They can't control everything. Sooner or later, it's going to happen to the point where they are going to actually have to divulge a lot of things that are going on. They can't keep burying it. Yeah, I got to wonder. I'll catch up with you
All
guys
good.
later.